Next, ratings for video games is the issue before a joint subcommittee of members of the Senate Governmental Affairs Committee and the Senate Judiciary Committee. This joint hearing was held to update Congress on the progress of video game ratings. Last winter, industry leaders told a congressional hearing that the industry would create a self-policed series of ratings for violent content in video games. The joint subcommittee also wanted to know how the industry is enforcing the ratings and sales enforcement to minors. This hearing lasts about 2 hours and 20 minutes. It is chaired by Connecticut Democratic Senator Joseph Lieberman.
It's been my pleasure to work throughout this process with my friend and colleague from Wisconsin, Senator Herb Kohl, and I would like to call upon him now for an opening statement.
Well, thank you very much, Senator Lieberman. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to begin by commending Senator Lieberman for the leadership that he has shown on this important issue. I'd also like to commend his very fine staff, in particular John Nakahara and Sloan Walker, for the work that they've done. Less than a year ago, our respective committees joined forces to find a way to help parents and consumers deal with the escalating level of violence in the video games that are sold to the young people in our country. And we believe that our efforts have paid off. Today, representatives of the video game industry across the entire distribution chain will present to us their rating system. And make no mistake about it, this is a huge American success story. And as a businessman myself, I am very proud of what has been achieved. Often where our children are concerned, the people care more about profit than protection. But this is not the case here. Yes, it is true that we in Congress have prodded the industry, but it is really the coalition of creators, manufacturers, and distributors working with parents who have taken dramatic steps to respond to what has become a serious problem. The video game rating system developed by the Interactive Digital Software Association will cover more than 80% of the market for video games. This system will provide critical guidance to parents and consumers about the nature of the products that they are purchasing for their children. And it will be enforced. So we appreciate all the help that we have received from major retailers like Walmart and Sears, who pledged from the very outset not to stock unrated games. Today we will also be hearing from representatives of the computer game industry, the SBA. They represent a small segment of the interactive entertainment business, and they are attempting to develop an alternative rating system. They are not nearly as far along as we would like. In my opinion, they need to show much more progress, but we nevertheless look forward to hearing their report here today. Finally, let me also remind all of us why we are here today at this third in our series of hearings. The reasons are very simple. Because according to the vast weight of evidence, violent video games do contribute to the violence in our society. And because until our efforts are completed, parents will often not know what they are buying their children. Notwithstanding the good news that we expect to hear today, Senator Lieberman and I continue to be prepared to take action if the need arises. Thank you very much, Senator Lieberman.
Thank you, Senator Kohl. Thank you again for your support and cooperation and partnership, and thanks to your staff. And I agree with you. I think we've achieved something here thus far. I became involved in this problem after I saw the videos Mortal Kombat with its bloody scenes of dismemberment and Night Trap with the offensive portrayal of violence against women. And I was personally outraged, but I was also very concerned as a parent of a 6-year-old girl who does not want her to grow up in a world where she or other kids can easily play these games. The best answer here, obviously, is for the video game manufacturers to eliminate or reduce the violence and sex in the games. But short of removing such scenes, there should at least be a rating system so parents can know what's in a game before they allow their child to play it. And that really has been the focus that Senator Kohl and I have maintained. I must say that I was surprised by the extent of the reaction to the first hearing we held. It seems to me that we touched a larger nerve among people than I expected. I kept meeting parents who said that they not only shared my outrage, but that they believed that our society was in too many ways out of control, that we had lost a sense of standards and values, and that in their own small way, violent video games symbolized both that loss of control and the difficulty that so many parents have in sustaining the raising of their own children. When they find their kids playing video games for hours on end, it compounds parents' concern about violence in our society. The point is that parents feel they're in a struggle with forces that are often beyond their control to influence and raise their own children, and video games are part of that struggle. Well, obviously we can't stop all of society's violence, but maybe we can draw a line here on violent video games. Today is a turning point in the battle to protect our kids and reestablish some standards. Today, the video game industry is announcing the establishment of an independent rating system that promises to give parents, for the first time, a clear idea of which video games are good for their kids and which should stay out of their homes. If the video game industry takes this rating system and goes the next step, which is to rate and label the games that are on the store shelves, then we can shelve the legislation that we've prepared to force a rating system into existence. Senator Cole and I have said from the beginning that this was a task best handled by the video game industry itself, free of government involvement. Earlier this year, nonetheless, we introduced our legislation based on that simple principle, which is that if we can require companies to label products that can damage a child's body, why not label products that can damage a child's mind? After our December hearing, Senator Cole and I urged the industry to meet certain tests as it began to work on a rating system, and those tests included involving outside experts in the design of the system, creating rating panels that are independent and not subject to industry pressure, and promising to display the ratings prominently in all advertising. I am pleased to say that the industry has created a rating system which certainly appears to pass all of those tests. From what I have seen, they have heeded the call of parents, of teachers, and of Congress to build a system that we can trust to provide the information we need. They are on the track to keeping their promise to having the system up and running for this year's holiday shopping season. Given the intense competition within this growing industry, this is a very significant accomplishment indeed. The rating system now, of course, must go from the hearing room to the store showrooms as soon as possible. Because every day, video games are hitting the markets that contain graphic violence and other material which is just not appropriate for children. A recent example is a game that I gather will be more widely distributed this fall called Doom, Knee Deep in the Dead. This game, which has not yet been rated, involves stalking gunmen, that is, gunmen who are stalking targets with an arsenal of weapons from handguns to machine guns to chainsaws. I would like to play an excerpt just to show that the problem continues. This is from Doom. what you see there is an individual with a successive round of weapons, a handgun, machine gun, chainsaw, just continuing to attack targets. The bloodshed, the gunfire, and the increasingly realistic imagery combined to create a game that I would not want my daughter or any other child to see or to play. What you've not seen is some of the language that's displayed on the screen when the game is about to be played, such as "act like a man," the player is told. "Slap a few shells into your shotgun and let's kick some demonic butt. You'll probably end up in hell eventually. Shouldn't you know your way around before you make an extended visit?" Well, some may say this is funny, but I think it sends just the wrong message to our kids. The game's skill levels include "I'm too young to die" and "hurt me plenty." Now, that obviously is not the message that parents want their kids to hear or be involved in. Every game like Doom or Mortal Kombat which comes to market without a rating tarnishes the reputation of the video game industry. I understand Mortal Kombat 2 will soon be available as well. Without a rating, there will be unsuspecting parents who buy the game for their children. Without a rating, there will be stores that rent or sell the game to children. With a rating system, parents at least will have a fighting chance to control what comes into their homes. The rating system unveiled today is a significant accomplishment. However, it alone is not enough. My hope, again, is that the video game makers will rid their games of needless violence. And I ask you to use this marvelous technology to fire the imagination of our children in positive ways. On behalf of all parents, I say to the video game industry, don't glorify violence. Teach our kids to solve puzzles, to answer questions, to learn about technology, to have fun. But having fun need not mean appealing to their lowest instincts. You don't have to give a child the chance to kill people to gain his or her attention. The marriage of high technology to low morality may yield short-term gain, but it is not in the long-term interest of our children or our country. For any rating system to be effective, we're going to need the cooperation of America's retailers. And I must say, thus far, they have been wonderful. Walmart has led the way for the retail community's growing support of a credible rating system. And their support is essential to make this system work in the real world. They've been joined by other retailers, an impressive cross-section of issued letters of endorsement, including Sears, Target stores, and software, etc. I'm going to submit these letters for the record. Combined with the support voiced at our last hearing by Toys R Us and Babbage's, these letters demonstrate a broad and deep retail coalition determined to help us make a strong video rating system succeed. We also have representatives of consumers and educators here this morning. They were with us from the start, and they really are the representatives of the millions of parents and children who are pushing to get the sex and violence out of the video games and to get a good rating system in place. I look forward, of course, to hearing their views this morning on the rating systems that the industry describes. I would now yield to our friend and colleague from Maine, Senator Bill Cohn.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Let me commend both you and Senator Cole for the extraordinary leadership that you've shown in this particular field. It strikes me that you've touched upon the right theme about how we glorify violence in our culture. It's not confined to video games. You can look at movies, at music, in sports. I mean, how we reward people for tearing baskets down rather than making baskets, to video games as well. And all of this violence threatens our families, it threatens our schools, it threatens the community, it threatens to tear apart the fabric of society itself. And I'm always struck by the paradox that's involved, how inconsistent we have in the way of, or pursue in the way of policies. We support tobacco, for example, and yet we then have to turn around and call for increased support for the Cancer Institute to find ways to defeat this dread disease. Same thing taking place today. We pass, or we're about to pass, I believe, an anti-crime bill, a component of which is violence to ban or try to come to grips with violence against women, which is an increasing phenomenon in this country. Senator Cole will recall a few months ago we held a hearing in a different room about gangster rap. It was a well-attended hearing by both the public and the press, trying to at least give some exposure to what is taking place in the field of gangster rap, the lyrics. And the lyrics that are being pumped into the ears of our young and perhaps most vulnerable segments of our society are truly horrific, because they advocate violence against women as treating them as mere chattels, less than chattels, to be raped and ripped and even murdered. And I called upon one of the recording industry executives, handed him a copy of the lyrics to one particular gangster rap song, and asked if he would mind reading it to the members of the committee at that time and to the people who were covering it. And of course he refused. And I asked him why he declined to read the lyrics. He said, well, children might be watching. Children might be watching. Well, it was about 10 o'clock. I think it was covered by C-SPAN. I'm not sure how many children are watching C-SPAN at 10 o'clock in the morning, but that was the rationale. It might, in fact, affect their sensibilities. It was too, I think, outrageous to read to adults who were watching and listening. And that's one of the purposes of this committee, Senator Cole and Senator Lieberman. They've been trying to do is call attention to the adults, because ultimately it's not the government. None of us up here have the expertise or the capability or indeed even the moral judgment to constantly pass that judgment on what is good or bad for our children or other members of society. But the parents have a responsibility, and in many cases they have abdicated that responsibility. This at least calls to their attention what is potentially going into the eyes and the hearts and the minds of their children. It's informed consent, much as we have in the field of medical practice. We're informing them as best we can. But they have the ultimate responsibility, and not members of Congress, to do the regulation. They may measure up to that responsibility or abdicate it, but at least what the industry is doing now is giving them a fair opportunity to measure up to that responsibility. I think that has largely come about, Mr. Chairman, through your efforts and Senator Cole's. So I want to join you, and I have a formal statement I'd like to submit for the record.
Thank you very much, Senator Cohen. The statement will be printed in full in the record. I appreciate your sentiments and your continuing support in this effort. Let's go to panel one now, which consists of Jack Heistand, Senior Vice President for Marketing at Electronic Arts and the Chairman of the Interactive Digital Software Association, IDSA, as we've come to know it. Good morning, Mr. Heistand. We welcome your statement and very much appreciate your efforts.
Good morning, Chairman Lieberman, Chairman Cole, Senator Cohen. I'm Jack Heistand, Senior Vice President of Electronic Arts and Chairman of the Interactive Digital Software Association. The IDSA's founding members include Acclaim, Atari, Capcom, Crystal Dynamics, Electronic Arts, Konami, Nintendo of America, Philips, Sega of America, Sony Electronic Publishing, Viacom, and Virgin.
Jack, could you indicate, or maybe you will, how much of the business IDSA represents?
Currently, our association represents in excess of 60% of retail sales of entertainment software. We appreciate the opportunity to update you on the development of a rating system for interactive entertainment software. Last March, we promised you our industry would develop a rating system that would put the controls back in the hands of consumers, and especially parents. The system we present to you today redeems on that pledge. When all features of this rating system are taken into account, from its independence, its reliance on outside academic, consumer, and industry oversight, its adoption of a rigorous rating process based on actual gameplay submission, its use of clear rating categories with content descriptors, and the display of easily understood icons, the result is a system which gives consumers credible, understandable, informative, and independent ratings for interactive software. I hope you will not underestimate the dimensions of this accomplishment. The issues we have tackled have been complicated, and clearly there are no right answers and there are no wrong answers. Indeed, perhaps the best way I can describe what we've gone through in the video game industry is equivalent to what you all may be facing in crafting a national health care bill. I do not believe anyone in the entertainment industry has moved as far as we have in such a short period of time. Soon after our appearance here last March, the IDSA hired Dr. Arthur Pober as Executive Director of the Entertainment Software Ratings Board. This is important because Dr. Pober was recently Vice President, Director of the Children's Advertising Review Unit of the Council of Better Business Bureaus. Before joining the Better Business Bureau, Dr. Pober was principal of Hunter College Elementary School. He has worked extensively in the public and private sectors to create and develop programs and materials for children. The charge we gave Dr. Pober was to design a rating system which met a series of standards. We have met or even exceeded each and every one of the standards you laid out for us. Let's review those. You asked that the system be developed based on input from experts in a variety of fields, including education, child development, and consumers. We did that. Dr. Pober conducted extensive focus groups with parents to test their reactions to different rating systems and get a sense of content that they felt was appropriate for various age groups. Beyond that qualitative research, Dr. Pober consulted with numerous nationally known experts in child development and education, including several identified by this subcommittee staff. You asked that the rating body be independent and insulated from marketing pressure by video game companies. That's done. The rating board was set up functionally independent of our industry. The rulings of that ratings board are not subject to review by the IDSA board or its member companies. Dr. Pober has the sole authority to hire and terminate raters and staff. Moreover, the identity of those raters will be unknown, will be anonymous to anyone except for Dr. Pober. Each rating will be determined by 3 demographically diverse individuals with no ties to the industry and will be based on their review of actual game content. In addition, several independent, highly distinguished experts on media and children have agreed to serve on an advisory board to meet regularly and evaluate all aspects of our system and, if needed, make any recommendations it deems necessary to preserve the independence of this system. The active oversight of these experts, who include Mary Ellen Feist of the Consumer Federation of America, Dr. Parker Page, President of the Children's Television Resource and Education Center, Freddie Greenberg, Editor-in-Chief Child Magazine, Dr. Louis Lipsett, Founding Director of the Child Study Center at Brown University, Dr. Jeffrey Goldstein, recent recipient of a grant from the Guggenheim Foundation to study the topic of violent entertainment and its effects on society, will provide enormous assurance that this system, at the outset and continually, will serve the public first. You've asked that the rating system be capable of defining its mission broadly enough to cover all interactive entertainment software. That's accomplished. This system is capable of rating interactive software published for all platforms. You've asked that the rating system recognize differences in age between very young children and other children. This system does that. You asked that the ratings body implement an effective enforcement plan with strong punishment mechanisms. We've done so. The icons I will show you in a moment will be registered trademarks of the IDSA. And as a trademark owner, the IDSA will be able to take appropriate action, including, but not limited to, pulling the rating, restickering the product, and payment of fines for violation of the marks. You asked that the ratings be clearly displayed on packaging, advertising, and promotional material. That also has been accomplished. We will strongly recommend that the rating icon be displayed on the front of the package. The accompanying content descriptors will be displayed in a consistent location on the back of all packages so consumers will know where to find them. And all publishers will be required, as a condition of securing a rating, to display it on packaging, advertising, and other consumer marketing material. You've asked that the system provide sufficient information to parents in 3 areas: violence, sex, and language. We have done so and more. Our system is coupled to 5 rating categories with a unique set of content descriptors so consumers will know the nature of the content which influenced the ultimate rating. You've asked that advertisements not target audiences for whom the game is not appropriate. That is done. Dr. Pober and his expertise in the area of children's advertising is developing an advertising code which will be supported by all of our member companies. You've asked that there be an aggressive industry public education campaign to inform consumers about the system. We're putting that campaign together. We are committed to providing detailed information to retailers, and I'm happy to report that retailers again have stepped up to the plate and have pledged their willingness to print and disseminate that information to their shoppers. Let me now take a moment to describe the system itself. The first rating category is the early childhood category, and it will contain games recommended for children aged 3 and older who have preliminary communication skills such as fine motor coordination and the ability to use consumer support material like a computer mouse. Games in this category will not contain any objectionable words or depictions whatsoever. The second category, kids to adult with the K to A symbol, will include games recommended for audiences from 6 to adult. Prior to purchase, parents thinking of buying it for their children over the age of 6 should review packaging and descriptions. The titles may require more advanced reading, thinking, and communication skills than the EC category. The interactive products in the KA category will contain a range of games, from traditional sports games to classic games like Mario and Sonic the Hedgehog. Games in this category could contain mild animated violence, such as one might find in a Looney Tunes cartoon. Games might also include comic mischief, such as one might see in cartoons or slapstick comedies like The Three Stooges. The third category is the teen category. This category contains titles recommended for consumers 13 years of age and older. The products in this category could contain depictions of violence, suggestive sexual scenes, or other content which would be inappropriate for children under the age of 13. The fourth category is the mature category. Titles in the M category are appropriate for persons over the age of 17. Products in this category could contain more intense depictions of violence, sex, and other subjects that would be available in a teen game, as well as substance abuse. The last title or category is adults only. Products here may contain graphic depictions of violence, strong sexual content, and the extreme depiction of profanity. It is distinguished from the mature category in much the same way the R-rated movie differs from an NC-17 or an X-rated movie. As I've indicated, in addition to rating icons, the system that Dr. Pober has developed will provide more detailed information on game content through applications of descriptors on virtually every game. These descriptors give purchasers the critical information on the content which influence the rating. Let's talk for a minute about the rating process. The rating categories and descriptors are the visible elements of what comes out of the system, giving consumers the basic content and age information they need. But the foundation of this system is the process by which that information is generated. Thus, the rating board has worked intensely to create a process which makes objectivity and independence paramount. A publisher can submit a wide range of materials, including videotapes, storyboards, scripts, and narratives. The publisher must submit these materials which show the most extreme content of the title. Then 3 demographically diverse raters will be randomly assigned to rate the product. These raters will separately review the submission, entering their detailed observations into a computer. When they complete their review, the raters will finalize their recommended ratings and descriptors. These individual ratings are then reviewed by a full-time rating board staff member who will then return the consensus rating to the publisher. Once the publisher receives the rating, he will have an opportunity to accept it or appeal it. The entire rating process will take no more than 5 to 7 days from start to finish, and it will be the same for all publishers and be applied on a first-come, first-served basis. Developing this rating process was one of the hardest tasks we face. It's not a rubber stamp system. It is labor-intensive and very costly to the industry. But we believe the ultimate credibility of a rating to customers rests mainly on who assigns the rating and how it's done. This rating system lodges ultimate ratings power in the hands of independent, demographically diverse raters who review actual game content. Without the opportunity for independent persons to exercise their own judgment, you are left with little more than a publisher-administered rating, which will not be useful to consumers, nor will it win public confidence. Mr. Chairman, Senator Cohen, I hope you share my view that we have met the challenge you laid out for us just a few months back, and we've developed a rating system that will serve all of our consumers, from parents to children to adults. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Heiston. We'll begin a round of questioning with my colleagues' indulgence. I'll run the lights in a 5-minute cycle, and we'll keep going as long as we have questions. I feel, from what I've heard and what I've seen, that you have indeed met the challenge that we set out before you. And it seems to me that the rating system that you are proposing today is the most informative and comprehensive rating system for any entertainment medium in this country that I'm aware of. And I appreciate that very much. Let me begin by asking a few questions on details. I gather that what the video game companies will submit is a tape extract of what are the deemed to be the most problematic parts of the tape to be reviewed by this independent board. Is that correct?
That is correct. Most tapes will range from 30 to 40 minutes in length.
Right.
The rater will then review the tape and log onto a computer the actual frames where they see any content that they believe could influence the rating process. That's recorded and totaled, and it eventually results in the ultimate rating.
And what's the deterrence if you find, for instance, that a producer has not submitted accurate tape information to you? In other words, that they've concealed some segments of the game.
There's a couple of protective mechanisms that we have. One is 10 days before the product ships, the completed interactive computer entertainment software will be submitted to the ratings board. At that juncture, they will review the finalized product and reconcile it against what was submitted. If we see any instance of someone misleading the ratings board, we have the option at that juncture to call it to their attention and stop the product from being shipped. If the product is shipped, because IDSA owns the trademarks, we have the rights to protect those marks. And anybody using them fraudulently, we can cause to have the products recalled, stickered, or if needed, punishment in the form of fines.
So that's great. And all those are part of the system you've set up. I wanted to say that I find your icons, as I believe you call them, the rating symbols that are on the chart here, to be, first, very easy to understand. And that is to see and understand. And secondly, I appreciate the number of categories. In other words, it does seem to me, and I'm going to get to this in a little bit, but when it came to Mortal Kombat 1, for instance, I just felt very strongly that it was easy to draw a line at age 13, but that was inappropriate. And that was, of course, we had examples of kids much less than that playing the games or using them. So I think the definitions that you've created here, that one cutoff point is 13 and another 17, are critically important. I also know that the so-called descriptors, that is the language in some detail, is going to be important. That will be apparently on the back of the package. I know you can't mention them all, but just give us an example of what some of those descriptors might be beyond the symbols. What will they say? What will they tell the consumer, the parent?
For example, we can take a product that would be rated kids to adults.
Right.
And so that we're all envisioning kind of a common ground. Say it's based on a Looney Tunes cartoon with Sylvester the cat and Tweety the bird.
As chairman, I would certify to the general knowledge of the figures that you've mentioned.
In that product, if we're seeing, the Tweety bird is terrorizing the cat and the cat falls off a wire and lands on his head, that would be described as mild animated violence. And that descriptor would be on the back of the package.
How about, let's take Mortal Kombat 1. What would probably be on the back of the... Leave aside the rating for a moment. What would be the descriptor, would you guess? I'm not holding it literally to it, but as an example.
It would read something like realistic animated violence.
Mm-hmm. Will the ratings appear on the cartridge or the CD in addition to the package?
That's our recommendation.
So that this symbol will appear on the cartridge and the CD. One of the big questions that we raised, and it has been raised, is how independent these raters will be. This gets a little bit intricate, but you've laid out that formally they will be hired and fired by Dr. Pober, that nobody but the doctor will know their identities, and that they themselves will have no ties to the industry. I wonder whether the raters will have any way of knowing what the video game publisher's preferred rating is when they begin their work.
I don't think that would be in the interest of a credible rating system. Clearly the strength of this system is based on only what you put in the system, how it's processed, and what comes out the other end. If at any time that system is compromised, we've set up a series of checks and balances with this advisory board of many independent and nationally renowned thinkers on the subject of child development, entertainment, and media. If they believe for any instance that this system has been compromised, I think that it would be in the press and get called to our attention immediately. We don't for any moment believe that the independence of this system will be challenged.
Will the rater even know who the publisher of the game is?
It would depend on who the rater is.
Yeah, but they wouldn't know it from what was submitted to them. They might know it from common knowledge, I suppose.
I mean, the rater, as I said, will have 3 demographically diverse individuals rating a product. So by that, it could mean there is a retired elementary school principal who's an African American. There could be a 35-year-old mother of 2, and there could be a 22-year-old law student. The 22-year-old law student may see a game coming in and say, I recognize that's from this publisher. Yeah. We can't prevent that.
Sure. Let me go now to the phasing in of the system. When can we expect to see the first games with the IDSA rating system on the shelves?
We're expecting the second week in November. Dr. Pober is in the process of having this system ready to accept products September 1. Given the lead times in our industry, you will see, as I said, second, third week in November.
When I walk into Walmart or Toys R Us this holiday shopping season, what percentage of the video games would you guess will have an IDSA rating?
It's going to vary by retailer and what titles they decide to stock and what inventory they may have remaining from previous seasons, but new titles that have been launched since the rating system is in place, I think you will see the wide majority of them. I think of total video games that are selling in the marketplace, over 50% of the volume that is sold this Christmas season will be rated products.
That's great. And then presumably by next Christmas shopping season, we should be at 100%.
That's our goal.
Or thereabouts.
That's our goal.
Yeah. Or as we're discovering, since you made the healthcare analogy, since we've discovered that universal coverage doesn't mean 100%, we know that you will strive to get as close to 100% as you can by the Christmas shopping season.
I think you're talking about the soft triggers or hard triggers in this regard there.
Absolutely. Mr. Heisten, as you know, there will be another Mortal Monday coming in September when the home version of Mortal Kombat 2, which I've seen in some of the arcades, is launched. And as you know, I object to the content of this game on principle, and I regret that Mortal Kombat 2 is coming out and that there'll be several versions of it, and it seems to me that there will not be a less violent version of Mortal Kombat 2 available as there was with Mortal Kombat 1. But that being what it is, I was particularly concerned that Mortal Kombat should not have been rated as appropriate for 13-year-olds or less. Games with such explicit violence, it seems to me, should not be available to people under 17. And I wrote to a claim urging them at least to rate Mortal Kombat 2 as appropriate in your category for M, that is ages 17 plus. I gather that that Mortal Kombat 2 is coming out in September. Therefore, the formal IDSA system of ratings will not be in place. I wonder if you have any knowledge, although I've talked to both major companies and I've urged them to rate it themselves, if you have any knowledge of how Mortal Kombat 2 will be rated.
Mortal Kombat 2 on the Sega platform will be rated MA17, which is the existing Sega rating system. Nintendo has likewise agreed on their format to flag that the game is appropriate for age 17 and above. Speaking with the CEO and chairman of Acclaim yesterday, he has made the pledge likewise to include those ratings on all advertising consumer promotional materials.
Okay, that's very good news, and again, I appreciate that, and that shows how far we've come since Mortal Kombat 1. So, though there may be, and there is, a lot more violence than I would like in Mortal Kombat 2, at least it will be rated as only appropriate for those 17 and older. Am I correct in assuming that once the IDSA system is up and running October, November, that Mortal Kombat 2 will be submitted to that system and will be rated under it?
As you know, our system is a voluntary system.
Right.
You know, we have asked, given the public profile of that product, that Acclaim submit that product to be rated once the system is up in place, and consider running the IDSA rating on all future production runs.
Okay, well, that's all we can ask you to do, and I think perhaps we can punctuate that by calling on the companies directly to become part of your rating system. Thanks very much. Senator Cole.
Thank you very much, Senator Lieberman. Mr. Heistand, as between ages 17 and over and adults, what is the difference?
Adults only. A legal definition is 18 and older.
So you're really differentiating there just a year between mature and adults only?
Correct.
All right. Mr. Heistand, these raters, of course, are crucial. Who they are and the judgments they make will result in what kind of a rating system we have and how effective it is. Is there some kind of a method by which the raters are going to be trained? I mean, how are these people going to function? Will they each bring their own ideas, or will there be no way to see to it that they come out with a product in which we can have confidence, that's consistent, that makes sense?
Each rater that applies for a position and is hired goes through an exhaustive training session. And that training session, they're not paid for. Our thinking is they've got to be committed to wanting to rate products. They've got to be educated to understand what content is going to affect what ultimate rating. We are right now going through the process of training over 50 raters.
It selects these raters.
That would be Dr. Arthur Pober.
He becomes a crucial person in this whole operation in that he both selects and trains the people who are going to be doing the job.
Correct. Correct. One of the most significant things that we did over the last 4 months was hiring Dr. Arthur Pober. He has extensive expertise in this area. His network of support among child development experts, many of whom are here today and will be testifying on a panel, they've been consulted and helped in designing this rating system.
Be nice to have an opportunity for us to meet him, just to chat with him. Not to challenge your selection, of course, but just to know who he is. Presumably to increase our level of confidence in what you're doing.
We would an open invitation extended to anyone and the subcommittee staff if they would like to come to the location of the Entertainment Ratings Board and see the raters at work, see the training system, see how they actually rate a product. A demonstration was given a few days ago to many members of your staff, and the response we received was very positive.
Thank you. Mr. Heistand, you said you are covering about 60% of the market, and as I looked at the numbers, it looked to me like you were covering more than that, about 80% of the market. Could you correct that, if that's a misimpression that I have?
Well, the video game industry represents, well in excess of 80% of the total volume that's sold. Our member companies, the 12 companies that sit on IDSA, represent about 60%. The discrepancy are third-party publishers that are smaller companies that develop video games for video game platforms like Sega and Nintendo. We believe those will be among the first people that sign up and support the system.
Okay. Out in the marketplace, in the stores where these video games are sold, what is likely to happen at the checkout counter where the sales are made if you have the wrong person buying one of these games? What will prevent it? What will prevent the sale from happening anyhow?
You know, as a publisher, that's a difficult question for me to ask. It's an issue that's on the mind of retailers right now. I think by varying degrees, different retailers will have a different opinion on the subject. The number one commitment we've been looking for from retailers is to help us educate consumers. And I think you will see today that retailers are making good on that commitment.
But isn't it true that if we're really going to have the system work, then there will have to be some effort at the store where the sale takes place to see to it that the rating system is observed at the checkout counter?
Obviously, that would help. I think the ultimate ownership in the issue of acquisition of any product for younger children, you know, that ownership resides with parents.
Okay. Can you tell us what the differences might be between your industry and the recording industry in terms of the ability that they would have to get the job done in a system which is not dissimilar to what you've done? I would differentiate the recording industry from the TV industry because there I think you have a whole different set of real-world dynamics that operate in terms of what you put on TV and what kids can watch. Not that we don't have a problem that doesn't need to be dealt with, but how is the recording industry dissimilar from yours in their ability to get a similar kind of an effort going?
Well, outside of being foolish when I was younger and trying to make it in the recording business as a performer, I don't know much about the record business and how it operates. So I think it wouldn't be fair to them to have me compare or contrast the mechanisms of their business and their operations versus ours. I think, you know, taking a step back and just looking at the industries, you know, they're largely similar. They're retail packaged goods businesses.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Heistand. Mr. Chairman.
Was that last series of questions a warning to the recording industry, my colleague? Maybe that's the next area of interest, but your question was a very good one substantively. Jack, I can't control myself from asking what were you planning to do in the recording industry as a performer?
I was hoping to someday appear on the Gong Show.
Well, you made it to the congressional hearings anyway. Again, just a few more questions. Let me ask about the advertising. You mentioned a few sentences in your opening testimony. As you know, we were concerned in the earlier hearings not only that there be a rating system on the games, but what happens in the advertising. And we're particularly concerned about the use of a child in a boy in one of the ads to promote a game that the manufacturer said was appropriate for older children, but this child certainly looked to most of us on the committee that he was barely 12, if not younger. So just talk a little bit more about what IDSA is proposing in terms of advertising content, both printed and electronic, to carry out the intention of the whole system.
Well, there are probably two components to advertising. One is the media buy, and the second is the actual creative of the advertising. Within the advertising code, the media buy recommendation will be to advertise a product through medium that effectively targets age-appropriate audience. With respect to creative, we want a fair depiction of the content of the game and the creative. We want the trademark or the icon of the rating symbol prominently displayed in all forms of advertising, whether it's television or whether it's printed matter. In addition, much of the promotion that goes on in our business is via retailers. As Senator Cole would know, the key retailers in our industry have signed up to say that they will display the ratings icons in their promotional materials that they mail out to their shoppers.
Okay, we're going to, generally speaking, we, as much as we're pleased with how far you've come, and you've come in an enormous way, I think Senator Cole and I want to stay involved, and we'll continue to do so on that level with the advertising as well, because that's probably a bit more amorphous than the fairly concrete categories and the process that you've laid out. Let me ask you about Doom, which I showed. I gather you learn things when you're in this line of work that you never thought you'd know, but we now have access to all that's happening in this field, and we hear that Doom is the exciting game on the personal computers at this point. And it's the one that people are looking forward to coming out this fall in the video game on the platforms of the larger manufacturers, members of your association. I assume that if the maker, the first I wanted to ask, of Doom submitted the PC version of this game to you, that you would rate it, or that the system would rate it?
Any publisher that submits any product on any platform, we are capable of rating.
Right. I don't know whether you know enough to answer this question, or know enough about the game, the particular game, but based on what you've seen or what else you know, where do you think Doom would come out on the rating system?
I'm not sure that's fair to speculate. I mean, I think by me rendering a judgment as to what something could be potentially rating in itself is kind of denigrating the independence and the raters performing that job. On this title specifically, I can tell you that the people at Sega have said that this product will be rated and will fit within the timeline that we've established. I think we've got a very good shot for that happening with Nintendo, given that their lead times are even longer. Right. I think most people in the industry believe that Doom will be a hit on the PC CD. I met with the gentleman who acquired the distribution rights to Doom for the PC CD 2 weeks ago, and very strongly urged him to ensure that this product is rated. His #1 customer happens to be Walmart, and in visiting with Chuck Kirby from Walmart today, Chuck said that he's going to do everything within his power to ensure that the product's rated.
Okay, I appreciate that. Again, we'll get to this with Mr. Kirby, but I can't stress enough how much there has to be comprehensive cooperation and how important Walmart's statement was at the last hearing, as was the statement of the people representing the video rental industry, that they would do whatever they could to enforce this. I apologize for having my vocabulary so affected by the healthcare debate, but they are the gatekeepers here, and they really have given us great encouragement that the system that you've put together can work. One final question. The other game that attracted our interest negatively at the outset of this was Night Trap. I know that at least one of the companies withdrew it from the market in the form it was in then. Do you know whether it's on the market now in any form?
I couldn't answer that question. You're right. I think a few of the retailers stopped selling the product.
Right.
As we mentioned the last time we got together, in our industry, the vast lion's share of any volume that is sold sells within 8, 10, 12 weeks of when a product is shipped. Mm-hmm. So that there probably are some packages out there of Night Trap, but if you looked at the top 100 list of titles that are selling, it's not showing up.
Yeah. So it leads me to the more general question then, which is, to what extent can we assume that games that are already out on the market will come under the new rating system if they continue to sell, if they have a longer lifespan than the typical game?
There's not much we can do right now to come to you and say we can handle that. By going backwards and trying to rate products that are in the marketplace today would put such an incredible burden on the ratings board and rating the products going forward. I think if we find that in the rare instance there is a product that is what we call an evergreen product that would continue to sell year to year and should be rated,
right.
I think if the market forces, i.e. consumers and retailers, said we want this product rated, that's the best assurance that it will happen.
And again, just to pick out Walmart or Toys R Us, if these large retailers say that they're not going to carry unrated games, that's obviously the most powerful incentive for the manufacturer to bring in all the games and to be rated, including those that are already on the market.
I agree with you. That is the most powerful thing that can be said. I think it's important to recognize that we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater from day one. You know, there are many publishers that need to be educated on how this system works. There are many small publishers, and I would hate to see their existence, their livelihood threatened by not being able to market products while they're learning and eventually supporting the rating system.
Senator Cole, do you have any more questions? Mr. Heistand, thanks very much. This has been a really great response, and we look forward to seeing it implemented, broadened throughout the industry, and just feel it's going to give, it's going to set some standards. It's going to create some limits here that will rely on not only retailers, but obviously parents and perhaps even the kids themselves to exercise some discipline and self-control. But this has been a substantial step forward, and I appreciate it. Thanks very much.
Well, thank you, and we look forward to delivering on our pledge and look forward to, while this has been a very rich experience, not having to come back, because I think you won't need to see us again.
Okay, it's mutual. Thanks. Panel 2 now. Mary Ellen Feist, Chuck Kirby, and Robert Chase. Mary Ellen is the Product Safety Director at Consumer Federation of America. Chuck Kirby is the now legendary Divisional Merchandise Manager at Walmart stores. And Bob Chase happens to be from Connecticut, is Vice President of the National Education Association. Thanks to all of you for being here and for your cooperation. And we welcome now your response to what we've heard and what we have not heard yet, which is Panel 3, the Software Publishers and the Amusement Machine Association, although I believe that you may be familiar with the rating system and the work that they're doing. Anyway, thanks. As I said at the outset, you really represent the people we're trying to represent, and we appreciate very much your support and cooperation all along here. Ms. Feist, we welcome you. It's all yours.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to testify here today on the rating of video games. I commend both of your leadership on this issue, to examine the strategies, to assure that consumers really know what they're purchasing when they spend money for a video game. CFA believes very strongly that any rating system that is developed must not contain any hint of censorship. The right of consumers to choose freely among video games, regardless of their content, should be preserved.
Let me just interrupt and say I appreciate your making a comment. I suppose it's been implicit here. I mean, based on my druthers, I wish that I could tell the companies to leave a lot of this junk out of the video games. But in this country, once you go down that road, it takes you to places you don't want to go. So that's why the best response is occasional jawboning, maybe some consumer pressure at the marketplace from the retailers, but ultimately the best that we can hope to do is the rating system. I apologize for that intervention, but I think that's an important point you made.
Okay. Our involvement in this issue arose out of our past work on toy labeling, and also our concern that rating systems already under development may be inadequate. A rating system that misleads or fails to have adequate safeguards for reliability may be as bad as having no system at all. The selection of a video game may not be as simple as one might think. While a video game is intended for amusement and entertainment, it's certainly not the Monopoly or Parcheesi type board game that we grew up with. On a recent trip to a store that sells video games, I asked a sales clerk standing in front of a huge display of video games, "Well, how do you know what age kids these games are for?" He smiled at me and he said, "You guess," and then walked off. This was a particularly apt response because guess is just what a lot of consumers have to do nowadays. The descriptions on packages are not much help in aiding this guessing game. And even testing the game out in the store prior to purchase does not provide consumers with this information. For example, parents have complained to us that what they witness or view in the store is often the lowest level of challenge and sophistication. Having only seen the game at its beginning level, it may raise for them, at the time of purchase, only very benign concerns, if any at all. It's not until later, when their child has been playing with this game repeatedly and reaches a higher level, that the more objectionable aspects of the game occur. CFA believes that the development of any video game rating system should include age-based categories. Because age labeling of children's toys is widespread, consumers are very accustomed to looking for an age labeling on children's products. These distinctions will not only assist consumers in purchasing games that may contain violence, nudity, or obscene language, they will also greatly assist those purchasing video games for preschool children. Because these younger children lack reading skills, for example, consumers shopping for preschoolers need to find games that do not rely on the user being able to read. We are pleased that the system developed by IDSA plans to incorporate different age groups in its rating categories. In addition to listing an age, the packaging should also indicate why that age was selected. Or in other words, incorporate the whole concept of informative age labeling. If a game is appropriate for children aged 3 to 5 because it does not require reading, it should say so on the package. If the game is appropriate for persons aged 13 and up because it contains mild profanity, it should state that on the package. This type labeling will also benefit adult purchasers who wish to avoid certain types of content. The rating and the descriptive information should be of a conspicuous type size and be placed on the front principal display panel of the video game package. The descriptive information should be placed in close proximity to the rating and age information. We don't believe consumers should have to look all over the package and try to read the fine print to find out why a particular game got the rating that it did. Furthermore, in retail outlets where the consumer is not given the video game until often after he or she has purchased it, it is crucial that the rating, including the age information, as well as the descriptive information, also be contained in conspicuous and contrasting type on the shelf literature. Providing the rating and descriptive information after purchase entirely defeats the purpose of having a rating system. In order to ensure that video games are properly rated, CFA supports a system that includes a comprehensive pre-market review of each video game. This review should include visual examination of video footage, including the most extreme content, and the opportunity to play the game as well. In contrast, a paper review, or one that describes the game in written documents, cannot, in our estimation, substitute for a more comprehensive review that includes the actual screening of the game. Protections against conflicts of interest among the raters must also be a part of the video game rating system. The right of both consumers and manufacturers or publishers to appeal a rating to an impartial body should also be included. Finally, strong penalties or sanctions for non-compliance with rating system procedures should be an integral part of any rating system under consideration. As we've discussed here today, video games can be played a variety of different ways on different platforms. A paramount concern to CFA is the possible development of several different rating systems to address the different video game delivery mediums. Multiple rating systems will only serve to confuse and frustrate consumers and may render each of the systems meaningless in the eyes of the public. In our opinion, Mr. Chairman, one of the most important roles you can play in the continuing examination of this issue is to help bring about a single, uniform system. We recognize that this is the ultimate and very difficult challenge, but one which will mean the eventual success of all of these endeavors. And finally, CFA believes that the rollout or introduction of any new video rating system must be accompanied by an adequate consumer education program to familiarize consumers with the terminology of the ratings, the graphics that convey the ratings, the types of descriptive information, the means to obtain more information, and the procedure for appealing a rating. The cooperation and active participation by retailers will be, in our estimation, a key to the success of this consumer education initiative. That concludes my statement. I'm happy to answer questions later.
Thank you very much. We'll go now to Mr. Kirby. Thanks for being with us again. Good morning.
Thank you, Chairman Lieberman, Chairman Cole. Again, my name is Chuck Kirby. I'm the Divisional Merchandise Manager of Electronics for Walmart stores. Walmart currently sells video games in over 2,000 stores. We strongly support the establishment of a credible industry-wide rating system. Walmart has received numerous letters from parents across the United States urging us to help establish an advisory rating system so that they, the parents,